today we're going to talk about the best foods for arthritis. Talking about osteoarthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, in fact, any itises. So the first thing you want to do is you want to go and search out the official recommendation for foods for arthritis. So there are many different official sites, but the one we're going to go to today is probably one of the most credible sites according to Google, and that is the Arthritis Foundation. And then what you're going to do is take a look at all the foods that they recommend. Okay. Now, we're not going to use this list of what to eat. We're going to use this list on what to avoid, because usually whatever the consensus is of what you should do medically, you should go in the opposite direction. So let's see what they say to do. Well, for starters, our diet rich in whole foods, fruits, vegetables, fish, nuts, beans, whole grains, okay? And of course, avoiding the saturated fats. Now, there is a few things on this that I do agree with. Number one, fish, and of course, vegetables, except there's some caveats to that, which I'll explain. So when you have arthritis, you have inflammation, right? So we're trying to get rid of inflammation. So when you consume a lot of fruits, you're going to generate a lot of sugar. And this is going to bump you out of ketosis, and this is going to create more inflammation. And of course, their explanation is that fruits are high in antioxidants. Well, that's true, but they're also high in sugar as well. Now, they also recommend nuts because nuts have antioxidants. Well, there's really only one nut that I would recommend if you have arthritis, and that would be walnuts, because it gives you the precursor. It's called ALA that turns into EPA in DHA, which is the omega-3 fatty acids. Now, you're not going to get a lot of conversion, but you'll get some. But unfortunately, the rest of the nuts are high in omega-6 fatty acids, and they can be inflammatory, especially if you're doing like the nut butters. Now, what about beans? Okay, aren't beans good for arthritis? Because they are also high in antioxidants. Well, the problem with beans is they're also high in lectins and oxalates, which are anti-nutrients that can aggravate arthritis. Not to mention, they're a bit high in carbs, and they can really interrupt your digestive process. And I would venture to say that a lot of arthritis has to do with inflammation in the gut. Now, of course, the next big one that the Arthritis Foundation recommends is these whole grains, right? Whole grains, because they're loaded with antioxidants, but they're also loaded with carbohydrates. They're loaded with gluten. They're loaded with oxalates. So all of these are going to aggravate arthritis. But the big problem with grains is that they're very high in the omega-6 fatty acids. So this leads to the next topic, what they say to avoid. They say red meats, eggs, and dairy. Okay. Well, let's talk about these three things right here. What you need to know about this, to make it really simple, is that when you eat animals that are fed with grains, you're going to get a much different profile as far as the omega-6 to the omega-3 ratios. So the question is red meat bad? It depends on what the animal ate. Now, what about chickens? Well, chickens are probably one of the most highest sources of omega-6 fatty acids. So if you get chickens from the farmer's market, you're going to get a much better profile. You're going to get less omega-6 because they're free-ranged, hopefully. And so they consume more bugs, maybe less grains. And so when you have pasture-raised organic eggs, you're getting a much better profile with these ratios. Now, what about dairy? Where does dairy come from? Cow milk. Conventional cow milk can turn into a good product if you ferment it. I'm talking about like grass-fed plain kefir, whole milk kefir. I think that can help your gut and help arthritis. If you can find cheese from grass-fed cows that's made from raw milk cheese like they do in Europe, that's much better than American cheese. So again, you just have to differentiate the source of what that animal ate. Same thing with fish, right? We have farm-raised fish versus wild caught. Big difference in the omega-6 to omega-3 ratios. So to keep this really simple, you want to have wild caught fatty fish like salmon, sardines, cod liver. You can get it in a can, wild caught. The cool thing about cod liver or cod liver oil is it's very high in omega-3, but it's also high in vitamin D and vitamin A, whereas fish oil doesn't have that. But fatty fish is really important. Farm-raised fish is not a good deal. Seafood actually is a good source of omega-3. Omega-3 is anti-inflammatory. Pasture-raised organic eggs is a good source of not only omega-3, but vitamin D. The problem with getting vitamin D from our foods, it's just very difficult to find foods high in vitamin D. Vitamin D is a very powerful anti-inflammatory for arthritis, so you'd want to consume the foods that align with that. Like even with pork, for example, pigs that free range, that go outside the barn, that get sun, have a much higher level of vitamin D than the pigs that are confined to a physical structure and they can never leave. Now, fermented vegetables are good for arthritis, especially cabbage, as in sauerkraut, or even cabbage juice is really good for the gut, and it's also good for arthritis. But vegetables in general is a crapshoot. Sometimes it can help your arthritis, sometimes it can make it worse. It's all dependent on how much inflammation you have in your gut, because a lot of people with arthritis have itis in the colon too. And if they do more fiber, even vegetables, that can make things worse. So some people that have arthritis will do very good if they completely eliminate any fiber and do the carnivore diet, which is a lot of saturated fat and protein, which is interesting. And of course, on the avoid list, avoid sugar, refined grains, avoid whole grains, which have gluten in it that turn into sugar really quickly. Avoid trans fats, anything with the word hydrogenated, whether it's partially hydrogenated or just hydrogenated, you want to avoid that. Seed oils are really bad for arthritis, and so that would include the soy, the corn, the canola, the cottonseed, even the peanut oils, safflower oils. These are all seed oils, and our bodies are not designed to consume this refined, concentrated oil. They're very susceptible to oxidation, and they can create a lot of problems, especially for arthritis. So a much better source would be coconut oil, grass-fed butter, using actual lard or tallow to cook your food in. And of course, avoid things like canned foods. Unless those canned foods are sardines or cod liver, I would avoid them. Another interesting thing to avoid would be the powdered protein, okay? Both plant-based protein and other types of lean protein powders, your liver just does not do well on them, and you may find that it stirs up your arthritis, especially whey protein and soy protein isolates, and even pea protein can do it. You want to consume protein that normally comes with the fat, so a natural whole food source of protein. Now, a couple additional things, if you're on the ketogenic diet, you may find that the oxalates in the food are stirring up your arthritis. And the foods that are high in oxalates are in spinach, rhubarb, chocolate, kiwi, almonds. But I think if you follow the information in this video, if you have arthritis, you will see a dramatic decrease in inflammation within a couple days. The last very important point is doing intermittent fasting, because the more times you eat, you're going to create this interaction with food in your gut and create more problems. It's a natural anti-inflammatory. So it's not just what you eat, it's also the frequency of eating. It's very important in getting rid of inflammation. Now, if you want more details on what to eat and you haven't seen this video, I put it up right here. Check it out.